Today on Call for Two, a spoiler-free review of The Hidden Listener, a 12-part deluxe mystery game from CosyKiller. What works, what doesn't, and can it possibly be worth $500? Stay tuned to find out. As a reminder, I purchase all of the games I play on this channel myself. So if you want to see more unbiased reviews like this one, I hope you'll give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can watch a full playthrough of The Hidden Listener on the channel, over 40 hours, and that includes long discussions and reviews of each of the boxes, each of the 12 boxes in this series, and then a 2-hour long discussion with the chat that played it with me, full of spoilers, talking about the parts we liked and didn't like and what we thought could be improved. You can jump to the end of this video using the timestamps if you just want to get my quick final thoughts on the game. However, let me give you a bottom line here. There is some truly great storytelling going on here, but it is not a game. It's got serious flaws, a good amount of frustration, and a very disappointing ending. So I do have a hard time thinking who to recommend this to. Now let's find out why. So what is The Hidden Listener? It is billed on the site as a detective mystery game meant to take 6 to 12 hours. Although it took us 35 hours to play through it, that's because of the way we do it on YouTube. I think 12 hours is probably a reasonable estimate for you. It's normally shipped as a subscription service sold directly from the website, 1 box a month for 12 months. It's sold at $500 directly from the CosyKiller website. It's one of 5 different storylines they have, targeted at different experience levels and different subject matter. This one, The Hidden Listener, is targeted more on people with some real experience and expertise playing these games. It is a spy story set in World War II in England from 1942 to 1945. It's heavily based on real-world events. It has no internet components to speak of, but you will need to use the internet to help you do some language translation and automate your cipher and code solving. Okay, I've said this is going to be a spoiler-free review. I do think people tend to be overly paranoid about those things, especially when you're paying so much. So I am going to show you a couple of typical components. If you're really dead set against seeing anything, you can use the timestamp on YouTube to jump over this segment. In each of the 12 boxes, it starts with a sort of introductory letter that sets up what you're receiving. And then typically each box is focused on more or less of one particular kind of thing. And I've got sort of the gamut of things you might receive. So sometimes you'll get a whole bunch of these memos, these top secret documents or memos. They're frequently very short and terse, but you might get 10 of them in a box. In other boxes, you might not get any documents, but you will get letters between our protagonist and friends, and this is fairly typical of it. Sometimes they're double-sided, and you'll get dozens of these memos over the course of the 12 boxes, and dozens of letters over the course of the 12 boxes. Occasionally, you might get a postcard. In the very first box, you get this big, giant newspaper. Maybe the biggest newspaper that I've seen in a mystery game. It's an actual reproduction newspaper. There are no planted stories here. This was an actual paper. And you can see it's several pages long. It's got real articles about the war. And you won't be reading all of it, but you may want to read big chunks of it for flavor. And then you're going to get somewhere along the line a diary. Now, I don't want you to read any of the contents of the diary, but I think it's important to see the sheer amount of content and work that has gone into making this game and writing this story. I mean, it is a dense, fully written diary that will take you hours to go through. Again, this is just a sampling of the kinds of content you'll get in the box. Let's spend a few minutes acknowledging where this system, where this story excels. It is perhaps the most historically grounded mystery story I've ever played. It is a highly personal story about one woman set in the backdrop of war. It's told through newspapers, personal letters, diaries, memos. The writing is very high quality, adult, with a real ear for details, and it captures the setting, the time and place very well. It really does make you feel like you've got a window into someone who's trying to understand how to live a life in World War II. Overall, really, the atmosphere is fantastic here. You really do feel the emotional weight of a world war. And although some of that heavy lifting is done by the newspapers, which really can emotionally impact you. And I would say this is one of the longest mystery games I've ever played. One of the longest that exists. This is the high end of how long a mystery you can buy. And it's put to good use because the character, our protagonist, is developed over the course of time, over these boxes, telling this story over the course of years, and you really get to know them. It's done with subtlety, humor. You really do feel like you're peeking into the life of a real person. A few other positive points to talk about. The production quality is quite high here. We didn't see any typos of note. The more deluxe items like the diary are very well done, believable, and enjoyable to go through. There isn't a lot of wasted money spent on creating props that you don't need, the way we often see in some of these big games like Hunt a Killer, where you're getting a frisbee and a tote bag and stuff. None of that here. It's focused on the documents. There are some interesting storytelling mechanical ideas here, chief of which is providing you with documents out of order. So each month you might get a set of documents and letters, and they cover the whole span of years. And so each box you're sort of filling in gaps and holes, and it's an interesting experience to try to reconstruct a story that way. And it is embraced throughout the whole thing. So it's one particularly interesting element of the experience. And related to that, there's actually quite a good job done here of creating some anticipation and foreshadowing. You'll frequently get a letter that says, well, we're going to try to locate this for you, or this is coming up, and it does create a good sense of suspense. And then the other thing that I really want to note is that we played this as a group, and there was a lot of interesting discussion that happened while we were playing it about the morality of things going on, about the psychology of characters, of people, whether it was arguing about whether it was realistic, whether it was moral, that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in those kinds of discussions and have someone that you would like, that you enjoy debating those things with, this might give you some material for those discussions. Okay, now let's get into where it starts to fall down. There is very little game here. You are essentially passively riding along while a mystery is solved, and it's solved in the least satisfying manner possible, with a complete lack of detail and resolution. There are almost no puzzles to speak of other than a fair number of ciphers and codes, which is appropriate given the World War II spy setting. But they are rarely fun codes to work on. They are frequently repetitive, occasionally painful busy work, with no payoff, and occasionally extremely frustrating and poorly thought through. Solving them rarely provides any benefit and almost never advances the story. And then the ending of the whole experience is a major letdown. Even on the narrative terms that normally work in this game, the ending fails. So let's talk a little bit more about the problems. One of the root causes of the problems here comes from improper setting of expectations. As I said, this really isn't a game. I think it's probably would be better to walk into this thinking of it as a sort of a human drama story set with the backdrop of war and told through letters and diaries. You shouldn't expect a game, but you also shouldn't expect a satisfying mystery, or any aha moments, any exciting discoveries, any deductive puzzles other than the ciphers. The other part of the problem falls under the heading of pacing. There are some real moments of emotional engagement here, as I said, some humor and subtlety, but they're punctuated by moments of real tedium and frustration, and a teasing, sometimes an effective teasing, of mysteries that build up your anticipation, but they are, the game seems uninterested in really resolving or addressing any of them with any satisfaction or in any meaningful way. Sometimes it feels like we're supposed to be solving a mystery, and then the game doesn't seem to care anymore and just puts us in the back seat. Inexplicably, these mysteries are sort of solved behind the scenes with evidence we never see. It's very frustrating. And there were a couple moments in the game that I remember very well where I thought we had stumbled on a key clue, where we were looking and deeply reading these documents and thinking about them seriously, and thought we had discovered some major clue, only to find out that the game didn't care about it. It was either a mistake, a bug, or unimportant. And that happens several times here. And halfway through, as we were approaching the end, the whole game seems to lose interest completely in actually solving any of the mysteries. Very bizarre experience. And then the very finale end, the final box, was a whole culmination of everything that went wrong. It was frustrating, emotionally misfired, disappointing, unsatisfying, sort of a combination of mechanically and narratively empty. Very strange experience at the end. A couple more small complaints before we move on. If you're used to playing these kinds of cold case games, you frequently get a whole bunch of dense documents and you really focus on them and pour through them and reread them and try to find the clues that are hidden in layers of information. There's none of that here. All the documents, and there are a fair number of them, are fairly shallow, straightforward, and short, and there's really nothing important to find. And we took serious notes while we played, and they really weren't important. If you do get stuck on a puzzle or a cipher, which you probably will, there are some really hard ones here, including ones that are hard not because they're hard to figure out what to do, but they're hard to just mechanically churn through the motions to decode them. If you do get stuck and need a hint, you may be in for an unpleasant surprise. The website with hints is very incomplete. It doesn't offer full solutions. There is no big, long epilogue explanation for everything here. You are left on your own to fend for yourself. There is a private Facebook group for the game that you have to apply to and be approved before you can get on there and talk. On the other hand, there is a little bit of a community around the game, and you may be able to post and get some personal reactions from other people who have played the game or the designers themselves. Final thoughts here. As I said in the beginning, this really is not a game. It's more of an interactive story. I think if you approach it in that way, you're likely to have a better experience. There are some real high points in the storytelling. There is some skilled storytelling going on here involving the personal drama of someone's life. On the other hand, as a total experience, when you get to the end, it is very unsatisfying, both mechanically as a puzzle system and also as a narrative experience. So it is hard for me to recommend this as a good use of your money if you have any limit to what you purchase and where you spend your time. Having said that, I do love the format of these stories told through letters and diaries. And I don't know that any company is doing a better job of telling personal stories through letters and diaries than CosyKiller, and they do it well. It's also uniquely rich depiction of World War II and the lives of people living their day-to-day lives here. There's a lot of true spy information, true facts, true operations that are described in these boxes. And I don't know any other company that's doing as good a job at conveying that and telling those true stories than this one. I just would love to see them learn from other designers of cold case games how to create more real deductive mystery and do a better job of making that a satisfying element of the experience. They need to work on making stuff less frustrating with having no payoff and wrapping up the experience better. If I was trying to figure out who this game might be, this interactive story might be suitable for, I do think maybe you're talking about real World War II history lovers. You might aim for people who want a well-written personal drama romance story told through letters and diaries, but who aren't concerned with getting a good solid mystery story. Maybe people who really love codes and ciphers, who have lots of patience for that kind of stuff, but who aren't interested in other puzzles or deduction or solving mysteries. Maybe for people for whom money is no object and want a luxury boutique long-form subscription game, but who also have high tolerance for an imperfect experience and an especially imperfect ending. So there you have it. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've played the game. There are basically no reviews of any of the CosyKiller games on the web because it's such a niche experience and so expensive. So if you disagree with me, and I'm sure there are people who do, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next video.